the state of Massachusetts in the United States is battling severe flooding caused by the continuous rains that have not stopped in the region for several days now. These floods have led to the inundation of streets, homes, and infrastructure. Currently, the local dam is on the verge of overflowing, but the authorities have not yet made a final decision on measures to strengthen it. It should be noted that the intense rainfall has damaged the railroad tracks, and in some parts of the road, train traffic has become impossible. According to the latest information, one of the rescuers was injured as a result of this bad weather. However, there is no official information about local casualties at the moment. Many houses have been blocked due to the rising water, and the authorities have carried out emergency evacuation of people using boats. At the moment, the state has declared a state of emergency, and residents are urged to follow the instructions of emergency services and not to make independent attempts to combat the natural disaster. According to meteorologists, heavy rains are forecast to continue in the region until at least the end of this week. Rescuers and emergency services are working around the clock to help the victims and minimize damage from the floods. The floods have also had a serious impact on Libya. In particular, more than 9,000 people are missing in the city of Derna, and 3 neighborhoods have been completely destroyed by flooding. The state of roads in the country is described as chaos, with flooded houses, floating pieces of metal, and severely damaged cars mixed with mud flows. Local authorities emphasize that the situation in the country is critical, but the government and the international humanitarian movement Red Crescent have limited relief capacity. The pre-flood heavy rains caused by Cyclone Daniel resulted in flooding in several cities and towns in the east of the country. Airports and seaports were closed as a result of these natural disasters. The cities of Susa and Derna have been declared disaster zones, and curfews have been imposed in flooded areas. The number of victims of the floods in Derna exceeded 2,000. Spain has also been hit hard by the floods. Streets have been flooded, traffic has faced difficulties, and airports have experienced delays in flight schedules. Many houses, especially their basements, have also been affected by flooding. It has been noticed that in many areas the local sewage system is unable to cope with the volume of water. No injuries or casualties have been reported at this time. The weather is worsening due to hurricane-force wind gusts, and local residents are being warned of possible power outages. The highest level of weather danger has been declared in some cities, including Madrid. Emergency services are making all possible efforts to help the citizens, but the situation is complicated by prolonged rainfall. It is predicted that bad weather will dominate Spain for several more days. Greece is also suffering due to the prolonged rains, especially the town of Karditsa, which is now hard to recognize as houses, streets, cars, and trees are completely submerged underwater. According to official sources, the death toll from the effects of the bad weather has reached 15 people and 2 more are missing. Up to 800 millimeters of rain have fallen in the area over the past 24 hours, which is more than the average annual rainfall. It is also worth noting that the floods have severely damaged agricultural land, and local farmers have lost their crops. This has created a critical situation, given that the region has already faced forest fires, with damage estimated at several billion euros. The initial heavy rains first hit the coast of Magnesia, including the port city of Volos, before spreading inland. Officials have not yet dared to assess the total damage, but the situation clearly requires serious attention and assistance for those affected. In Hawaii, the Kilauea volcano continues to erupt, and it's a spectacular sight, especially at night. The reddish-orange streams of red-hot magma flowing from the crater are eye-catching. The U.S. Geological Survey has declared the area around the volcano an aviation red alert code. The eruption began around 3 p.m. local time at Halemaumau crater. At the moment, emergency services say there is no immediate threat to the local population yet. Nevertheless, residents are asked to closely follow the messages of rescuers and stay informed of the situation. Kilauea volcano is considered one of the most active volcanoes on Earth. Its height reaches 1247 meters. This is the third eruption of the volcano during 2023. In Morocco, a village in the city of Kilauea turned into ruins after an earthquake. Instead of residential houses and architectural monuments, only piles of rubble and stones are now visible. Many locals, left homeless, are forced to live on the streets. The number of victims in the country has already passed 2,000, and many more people have been injured. Large-scale search and rescue operations continue throughout the region, as there may still be survivors under the rubble of destroyed buildings. The earthquake with a magnitude of 6.9 occurred on September 9, just 80 kilometers from Marrakesh. Morocco's King Mohammed VI declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of the quake and ordered the kingdom's flags to be lowered. Even those whose homes remained relatively undamaged continue to live in a state of constant fear and anxiety, waiting for more earthquakes. In Abuja, Nigeria, a canoe capsized, and according to the latest reports, 24 people have died, many of whom are still missing. The incident happened at a local reservoir, and local officials say the canoe is said to have collided with a log. At this time, emergency services are actively engaged in an operation to recover the bodies of the victims from the water, and search and rescue efforts continue. There were more than 100 people on board, mostly local farmers. This tragedy is already the second in the last 3 months in Nigeria. According to locals, boat wrecks on the busy rivers of this country are not uncommon. Usually such accidents occur due to overloading of vessels and their poor technical condition. However, the concern is that the government is not doing enough to ensure safety in the region. For example, no funds have been allocated for the purchase of life jackets and seaplanes for emergency services. The U.S. Court of Auditors expressed its belief that the construction of the wall on the border with Mexico had a negative impact on the natural environment and cultural monuments. In particular, it emphasized that the blasting operations disturbed burial sites of a sacred Indian tribe and altered the flow of water streams. Moreover, the construction itself in places historically used for religious and cultural rituals has caused resentment. To speed up the construction process, the authorities, according to the audit chamber, disregarded federal laws and other regulatory norms. Recall that the former U.S. President, Donald Trump, tightened the migration policy and strengthened border control. It was he who initiated the construction of a wall on the border with Mexico, believing that such a measure will help to stop illegal immigration and drug smuggling. 2,000 white rhinos were successfully released into the wild in Africa. It turned out that these animals were previously located on a ranch measuring 8.5 hectares, which belonged to a businessman named John Hume. However, it is worth noting that Hume did not conduct his business without self-interest. He removed horns from rhinos, hoping for the possible legalization of international trade in these horns. He claimed that the proceeds would be used to fund the conservation of the species. However, his business plan failed, as the legalization of the rhino horn trade never took place. He was therefore forced to put his farm up for sale. This ranch, along with the rhinos on it, was purchased by conservation group African Parks. The current plan is to release about a third of the rhinos a year into various reserves where they will be protected from poachers. This massive relocation will be one of the most significant wildlife rehabilitation projects on the continent. Scientists and ecologists believe that returning these animals to their natural habitat will help conserve biodiversity and species in the wild. Friends, there is no doubt that climate change is having a significant impact on weather events such as heavy rains, typhoons, hurricanes, storms, and floods. These extreme events can be the result of human activities, including greenhouse gas emissions, as well as impacts on ecosystems. However, it should be remembered that nature also has its cycles and factors that influence weather. It was important to strive to work together to reduce the human impact on the climate and to take measures to combat climate change, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, shifting to renewable energy sources, and improving resource efficiency. With regard to building walls at borders, this is a complex issue. In some cases, walls can be effective in controlling illegal migration, but they can also have a negative impact on the environment and the local community. It is important to carefully weigh all aspects and seek a balance between security, environmental, and humanitarian aspects in such decisions. Let us discuss and share our views on these important topics and work together to preserve our planet and the well-being of future generations.